Hi, I'm Jonna McCooey.
And I'm Amy Olds.
And we're back with Fairport Forward. Today, we're going to be talking about multimodal transportation in our village, learning about what that means, all the things that we've got in place from a multimodal transportation perspective, how we can better support all the ways people come to our village. We've got a great guest today who can add some good commentary to that, has some good ideas. So let's get into it. As always, are talking about our DRI survey. And when we did the survey, there were a few DRI projects related to transportation on the whole. And though when we talk about transportation today, we're talking about walking, biking, driving, boating because you're coming on the canal. You might even take a bus to the village of Fairport. Maybe I'm leaving out any ways, but
those are some good ways.
Yeah. So the projects that we had in the DRI application that related to transportation included the trolley project, an exciting one that I hope we get into a little more later, our wayfinding and signage projects, some improvements to our harbor.
Those are the main three that I think touch on transportation as a whole.
Yeah, so we had those projects in the application, and of course, people had thoughts about it. So let's hear about that, Amy. What did people think about transportation in the village?
Sure. So in the survey, people definitely talked about biking a lot. Biking was a topic for the comment section. People that really wanted to focus in on ways we can improve the safety of biking through the village. Everyone appreciates that taking the canal path on a bike is really fun, but people often would say, well, I don't know about taking a family bike ride down Main Street, for example. Yeah. People didn't really have a ton of negative comments about anything particularly. There was obviously, it's mostly safety stuff. Like cars, I don't want cars whizzing past me. I maybe don't feel comfortable if there's not like a separation between my kid on a bike and some car that's whizzing off of the railroad tracks, that kind of thing. And as far as the trolley project goes, I think that garnered a lot of positive feedback, which made me excited. A lot of folks said, oh my gosh, that'd be so cool for me to just like step out of my house, walk a block, and take a trolley down to the cannery for the night and then get back on and I'm home. So I think residents particularly thought that was cool, even though I had thought it would be more appealing to visitors.
Right. Well, that's exactly where the idea came from. How can we relieve some of the congestion that we have in some parts of the village at certain points of time? We know we do get a lot of car traffic, and as is typical, people want to take that car and put it like right exactly where they're going. So with a trolley, we could hopefully alleviate some of that, have the benefit of people experiencing the whole of Main Street, the whole village, and not just that one place that they wanted to go that day.
Yeah. So it was really interesting that there were these tiers of safety concerns no matter what mode of transportation you were utilizing.
Yeah.
So that's where the survey stands.
Great thoughts. Let's hear from Arian.
Yeah. So Arian, first you should introduce yourself.
So I'm Arian Horbovetz. I'm the author of the Urban Phoenix blog. I've been writing this blog for 11 or 12 years now. Typically, I focus on cities. I live in Rochester. It's a great city. What inspired me about this is talking about communities and talking about how do we get back to communities where we connect. Placemaking is a huge thing for me. That third space is a huge thing for me. You know, how do we talk about making our cities not just car friendly, but also pedestrian, bike friendly? You can get around in lots of different modes of transportation. And that's really, really important to me. I had somebody recently, I was mentioning that I was going to be on this program, and they were saying, well, you know, you're a city guy, come on, you know, whatever. I love Fairport. I love what Fairport has done, both for residents and for visitors. I bike to Fairport regularly, especially in the summer.
What's your route? Do you take the canal?
Oh, I take the canal. I live in the Highland Park area. So I have the Highland Crossing Trail right across from my apartment where I live with my wife. And you know, I can hop right on the canal path and go, it's about an hour trip. And go right into Fairport. And it's such a lovely trip.
It's
and I know
beautiful.
So many people that experience Fairport from that perspective, right? You know, the best part about that trip too is when you come into Fairport, there's this, when you're a cyclist, you're rarely welcomed into a community. And you have that really neat kind of, you know, entryway, you know, from the canal path, the Empire State Trail there, into the community. And you feel like you're welcome. There's bathrooms there if you need to use them. That's a really amazing small amenity that is a big deal for, you know, if you're going to approach the community that way. So I love that entrance into the Fairport community. I just love what the town has done to kind of really set itself apart as a dynamic destination, both for residents and for visitors like myself.
Love to hear
That's
it.
great. Do you want to get a job with OCED?
I love it. I love what you're doing. I love the kind of dynamic. It's hard to kind of have these conversations, right? Sometimes in small town settings, right? Because a lot of times you have conversations between residents and visitors, and finding a common ground and blending those conversations is really vital and sometimes difficult. But I think you guys do a phenomenal job of that.
Well, thank
That's
you.
great.
And our last episode was about tourism specifically, and maybe you did listen to it. And we had Visit Rochester here, but that same concept of it has to be that you balance those two together. So it's great to hear that someone with, such an amazing transportation interest sees us that way, because we like to think of ourselves as that way. But hearing it from a third party feels good.
Yeah. To that point, I think the reason there are so many comments and thoughts is because of the foundation we already have. We have a very walkable community. We're fortunate in that way. It's unique to have the canal path coming right onto your main street. It's unusual that we have even another transportation like entertainment feature is all of the trains, right? Mm-hmm. You can't get on and off the train, but do you know how many people are train watchers and want to come and watch those trains? Here's one right here.
I'm one of those people. I love the train platform. As somebody who used to go there, I'm a train nerd, always have been.
Love it.
So it's nice because, I know so many people used to go there and watch trains. Now you have a space to do that. And I think it's cool that the mix of people that are there, whether it's young kids, whether it's, ex-railroad employees and stuff like that have that. I love that dimension to it's almost that in itself is almost a community tourist destination is watching trains if you're somebody like me.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So we do have that foundation. We have the walkability. We have a lot of bikeability. And now we're talking about how can we best support all the ways that you arrive to our village, and also the whys behind why we should. There is a direct benefit from a business and economic perspective to making sure you can support, again, all the ways people arrive to the village, but also the pace by which they move through. Mm-hmm. So if you're just, going to cruise down Main Street in your car and you don't have to stop and you're just from this point to that point, that's not a huge benefit from our merchants. It doesn't really reflect what Fairport has to offer. We also have to remember there's an economic development impact to moving through the village slowly and not just cruising down Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, there are countless studies that show that per capita, people spend more money at local businesses when they're on foot, when they're on bike, than when they, are in their car. When you're in your car, you have to find a parking space. First of all, you're kind of in this space where you're amongst other traffic. You're feeling like you have to keep moving forward. And when you're on foot or when you're on bike, you have the freedom of being able to stop, tie up your bike anywhere. So there are studies that have shown that, like I said, 30%, people spend 30% more at shops on foot than they do when they're in their car.
You notice things. I mean, if you're just in your vehicle and you probably are there for at least potentially a main purpose, right? I'm maybe task oriented. I'm going to the UPS store. I need to park as close as possible to the UPS store. I don't notice that this shop window has a new display of cute stuff, or a new little shop just opened, or I could just go grab a coffee real quick. So when you're slowing down, that's what we're going to call this episode Village Speed. Yes. Village Speed. It's not about rush, rush, rush. It's about embracing the character and charm of what Fairport can be, and maybe not getting all cranky when the lift bridge is up or when a train's going by, but instead remembering it to celebrate those moments of village speed and remembering it is a strength for us.
Yes, Amy, that is, you mentioning that, talking about the trains and talking about the lift bridge are two key elements. I wrote a piece on how this helps make Fairport such a vibrant place.
Ooh, we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So think about if you're ever a pedestrian, right? You've been a pedestrian, I'm sure, at one point or another along a busy, fast-moving traffic street, right? It's not fun. It's not a good experience, right? when traffic moves slowly, sometimes it's inhibited by, a train or a lift bridge in Fairport, for example, or just general traffic on Church Street, right? But you feel like the cars are not moving that much faster than you. And that does a weird thing to your brain that you don't even realize, right? So when that's the case, when traffic is moving slowly, that's where you're going to see places where people feel good about walking, good about biking, getting scootering, whatever your mode of transportation is, or just whatever your vibe is and your feel is, that's always accentuated by slower traffic. And that's something that, because of Fairport's kind of barriers to traffic speed, those are actually positives to community building. And I think outside of Fairport, a place like Schoen Place, right, in Pittsford, you have that same situation. You have slow moving traffic through there because the streets are narrow. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. That's where you see a lot of vibrancy. So I think about Schoen Place, I think about downtown Fairport as those same places where traffic speed is restricted, and that is a positive, not a negative.
Love to see it that way. I think that's something we can all really remember when
instead
of getting angry
down Main Street and the next train comes by and slows us down.
Or sometimes it'll be like the lift bridge just came down and then you're stuck in that little spot and you're like, you hear the horn and go, oh my God. But you're right. It is wonderful for our merchants. It's wonderful for our vibes. And everyone loves the vibes.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
We've definitely discovered through all of this conversation.
So, we've got this great foundation. I'm interested to talk about how do we take it to the next level. We know we have a bikeable community. People are riding their bike down the towpath. They're coming, they're staying, they're passing by. Maybe they're on foot. What are the ways that communities like ours can enhance what we have on offer and through that cycle, attract more folks to our downtown?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Fairport to, especially from a cycling perspective on the canal there, to kind of welcome more of that modality, right? Church Street, interestingly enough, has, is a major thoroughfare, right? And you have
Church Street, even though most of our listeners do know Church Street is 31F, but
yes,
it's 31F if you're not from Fairport. That's Church Street. And how most of our car traffic arrives to our village is right up 31F. Then you're on Church Street and in our village.
Mm-hmm.
So Church Street has those, shoulders. They're not necessarily bike lanes, but you have that opportunity, that space, to explore in the future, maybe putting up some bollards along there so that cyclists. So the interesting thing, if you're on bike and you're looking to bike for transportation, not just for, or even for recreation as well. It's for both. If you bike on the sidewalk, you're a menace to pedestrians. If you bike in the road, people honk at you and, don't like. So anytime you have that division, that space that's specifically yours on bike, where you feel safe, you're not bothering pedestrians. Also, you're not in the way of drivers. If you can basically cordon off that space, if you can create some sort of delineation between traffic and cyclists other than, a little strip of paint. That's huge. There's an opportunity I think on Church Street.
That's interesting for you to say because I know many of our streets are restricted from, we're a little village and we have narrow streets just like other places may. But you're right, Church Street does have that width that could accommodate something like that. It's interesting because I know from doing the research for the show that there is safety in even the perception of safety when you are not only separated, but also just like the clarity of knowing you are supposed to be there and other people know that you are supposed to be there. Like to your point, the driver is like, no, they're where they're supposed to be and I'm over here.
And that's a huge thing that you mentioned. People talk about bike lanes as, there's a whole
we know the comment
there,
section
right?
has a lot to say.
Of course. But bike lanes can be good for drivers as they are for cyclists, right? Because that these folks have this room, right? And you're not going to be in that room and they're not going to be in your room, right? Like, so they have their own space and that's cool. I appreciate that very much because sometimes if you're approaching a cyclist and there are no bike lanes, there's no shoulders, no nothing, you as a driver go, should I go around them? How should I go around them? How close should I get? Anytime you have an opportunity to kind of create a space that is specifically dedicated for that mode of transportation is really, really important, even for the people who are not using that mode of transportation. It makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Your idea of Church Street is interesting. So in preparing for this episode, John and I met with Andy Martin, who is a member of our village planning board and a transportation guy by trade. He had some very similar points of view and knows when he talks about bike lanes, he talks a lot about how it's not that we just put bike lanes everywhere. It's that you also have to have like reasonable expectations of what can work here, right, and that it's not as simple as just throwing them up everywhere and just, well, there they are, have fun, and go forth.
Even another point from that conversation with Andy is that bikers are not all equal, right? Mm-hmm. There are the type A biker. Maybe that's you, Arian, who's going to ride. I think Andy described it as a type A biker is going to bike anywhere. They would probably bike on 490 if you would let them do that. A type B biker is going to bike for transportation with the right facility, the things that we talked about just now. There's maybe barriers, maybe a clearly marked lane. If there's a good spot for them, then they're happy. And then there's the type C biker who is typically more recreational. They would want to be on the sidewalk. They're families with children. They probably also don't feel safe in that bike lane. And so it's important to remember as we look at solutions or opportunities that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and a bike lane down Main Street doesn't necessarily make it any easier for that family and young kids to bike down Main Street if they're too close to traffic or so.
Andy was talking about maybe finding that type of biker might be more interested in a bike only area or an area where I'm going to take my kids down and we're going to putz around for an hour and then we're going to grab ice cream after, but we're not going to spend all of our time biking up and down the Main Street downtown corridor of Fairport.
But still connections are important for those. So do you have any thoughts about the concept of we may have opportunities within the village to create more bike lanes or bike boulevards and those kinds of things, but also can we create opportunities to connect our village from some of the further away places, and what are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, definitely. Being a city advocate for these kinds of things. Cities have something that is inherently different than suburbs. Cities have street grids, right? So you have main streets, and then just sometimes a block away, you have a side street that has far less traffic. It is much easier to navigate on bike, right? No, less traffic. It's moving slower. Maybe it's more residential. So, for example, living in the Highland Park area with my wife, if you're going to drive into the city, you're going to take Goodman. Okay, but one street over is Meg Street. Meg Street is far less traveled, right? Very low car count, and there's speed bumps. So if I'm biking, I'm moving at the speed of cars, right? Because I could just fly over those speed bumps where cars have to slow down as they approach. Suburbs, unfortunately, don't have that luxury usually of having a street grid. Usually they're what are called collector roads. For example, Aralt is what we would call a collector road, where neighborhoods are built off of that, and those neighborhoods are typically isolated. They're not interconnected. They end in a cul-de-sac, or maybe they just it's a circle, right?
Yeah,
with a bunch of meandering street. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different level of design. So there's not as much of an opportunity for suburbs to create those kind of alternate routes off the main routes. However, I did, for example, look at Fairport and see you can actually get from downtown Fairport to the Parrington Wegmans with maybe traveling along a main road. You can even be on the sidewalk for about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So there are ways you can knit through a community through those off-street. You mentioned bike boulevards, and that's kind of that example, right? Bike routes that are off the beaten path that you wouldn't maybe consider, but are actually really pleasant routes. So I think of areas like, I think West Avenue, right in downtown Fairport, you could kind of go off of Church Street there, and you can access downtown
Okay,
without...
so is that the one that kind of curves around, like it follows the canal path kind of, or am I thinking incorrectly?
It connects back with, you mentioned the creamery there.
Oh, Moonlight Creamery.
Yeah, Moonlight Creamery, right? Yeah.
Like the back of the garage.
It's a residential street, right? But like if you are coming up, Church Street, for example, and didn't want to, go to that main
Yeah.
intersection in downtown between Church and
The
New.
Four
and-
Corners.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of traffic, obviously. And the good thing is, it's not terrible. It's slow-moving traffic for the most part. It's great. But if you want to avoid that altogether, you could take that street, you could take West Ave into downtown. And it's finding those strategies. It's thinking differently about how you get from point A to point B.
No, that is obviously something that as a bicyclist, and you drove around and looked or rode around probably, but is that something where you would see like an opportunity for like some sort of cute signage, like this is a fun bikeway? Like, is that how you take it to the next level, that you recognize and show that, yeah, we care about you too. We care about someone that's using a bicycle, and we want to direct you and educate you on some interesting routes to take? Or like, how do you get the word out that that's something cool?
That's a great question. Signage is everything there, right? Like, so when you're accommodating, you're in a car and you see signs all the time that accommodate you. Most of those signs don't have any meaning to cyclists.
Are there any
right?
like industry standards for bicycle signage? This
There
is very
absolutely
new to me.
If you go to Rochester, we have lots of bike boulevards in
Okay.
downtown Rochester. And what they'll do
Open
is
my eyes.
they'll give you, this many miles to this destination, this many miles to this street, this many miles to this street. And when you see that, that's really, really cool. It's a welcoming thing. Also, if you want to create a community map, if you want to make this a priority and say, this is a map of how you get about, how you move about Fairport, on bike.
I love that.
I think that would be a phenomenal resource because, again, with so many people moving through the canal path there, I think that would be a great
That could
resource
be
for
really
people.
cool. Even like a little
placard
brochure that you pick up maybe by the public restrooms.
1,000%.
Actually, taking it back to Andy, he told us that there's an ingredient that people don't often think about, which is bike storage or parking. So like, say that we have that area, you're coming up the canal path and you're like, I'm going to swing into the village for a hot minute. But then what? Like, where you need somewhere very obvious for you to put your bike safely and feel confident that it's going to still be there when you come back. And, to your point, that area could be perfect for that. Hey, here's where I'm filling my water bottle up because we have a water station there, and I'm going to run to the restroom, and my bike's safely parked and locked up, and now I'm going to walk in.
So another tool that Andy had mentioned is not just having those, but the communication of those are around, making sure that can you get those bike stations listed on Google Maps? Do people know where to find those resources, what to do once you arrive? And maybe this is a great segue, although I think we could talk about bikes this whole time in a whole other episode. Let's talk about, we're doing it a little bit now. Once you get to the village on your bike, we have the right supports there. You can fill your water bottle. You can use a restroom. You can
repair your bike.
At a
we
bike
have a
repair
station over there.
I've used it.
Oh, good. We want to get another one. We think we need another one on the other side.
But then there's the concept, okay, now you're here, and we also want to serve the pedestrian. So I know you ride your bike a lot of places, but then you're also an urbanist, so you get off that bike and you explore. One of our DRI projects is wayfinding and signage, and the best way to make sure that we use those for cars, where do I park if I have to go to this place? I don't need to drive there. I could park in this public parking lot. But also, I'm just walking down Main Street. I want to know what's 5 minutes down that way, or I just parked my bike. I want to find something to eat. Thoughts on innovative ways to use your wayfinding to serve all modes of transportation?
One thing that we say as urbanists, right, is no matter what your mode of transportation is, whether you're driving, biking, using a scooter, whatever you're doing, riding the bus, you're always eventually a pedestrian.
Yes.
It's one point or another. You are always on foot.
Yeah.
So, how do you best kind of accommodate that experience? I would say that Fairport inherently as it is already extremely walkable. I love to park my bike. When I come into Fairport there, I lock up there at one of the bike, the nice bike stations there. And then I become a pedestrian. And, I use that public restroom that's there. I'll fill up a water bottle, like you said. And then I'm on foot and I'm visiting, the little shop, across the street there, which is great. I'll go over to the cannery. I love whiskey, so Iron Smoke is always a destination.
Yep.
I'll go over the was it Lulu's taqueria there,
yes.
which is amazing. And I think Fairport is fantastic if you are on foot. It's just a great place to explore and pop into whatever place you want to go to. But always, again, signage is huge. If you can say, this many miles to the, 0.3 miles to this, 0.7 miles to this.
Or maybe walk time. That could
Walk
be
time.
good. Average walk time
That's
is
a
probably
huge thing too. I was just at
translating.
O'Hare Airport, and it was just nice to say it's 15 minutes to gate whatever, and
Right.
It does. It alleviates some of the stress too. Like, oh, I'm
Or you
almost
go
there.
like, I can walk 5 minutes.
Yeah. Or I have time to go pop in here because it only takes me 10 more minutes.
maybe you have some mobility challenges too.
Yeah.
Maybe you're somebody,
Yep.
and to say, to see that you're walking 5 minutes instead of 15.
Well, that might
that's
be a
huge
good
difference.
transition to talking about the trolley, because I really want to talk about the trolley before we get run
Right,
out of
let's do
time.
it.
Let's do it.
Thinking of all the different reasons why a trolley could be cool, and one of them is to accommodate those with accessibility challenges, or just maybe you just can't think about walking that far. There are days when even the most athletic person just they want a break from it, and it's a part of the experience of the charm of Fairport. To lean into that with something like a trolley, I think could be really cool. I've seen a couple in different places. Maybe you could speak because you're more well-traveled than I am, but I did see one in action in Charleston, and it was super cute and all kind of branded to the city. I don't know if it was run by the city or who it was, but people were using it and it was cool.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen anything like that in action, or what kind of recommendations could you make if something like that were to get some legs?
Yeah, definitely. And when you're talking trolley, I assume you're not talking like tracks in the ground.
Right.
You're
No,
talking a
we
bus
call it a
that-
trolley.
Yep.
It's don't tell anyone. It's a shuttle bus,
But
but
cute.
a cute shuttle bus that looks like a trolley and it fits the aesthetic of the village. The vision is it will run up and down Main Street. Maybe there would even be two. So you could start at one end, you could start at another end, park your car, park your bike, arrive on the Colonial
boat.
Bell, and hop on that trolley and go up and down Main Street and hop off when you want to. And that's the vision for the trolley. Just to be clear, for the DRI project, we're talking about investing in the shelter infrastructure of the trolley, not the actual vehicles.
Yeah, there are restrictions to certain grant funding.
So the trolley station could be not just the place where you hop on the trolley. It could also be a bike station. It could also be a bike rack.
It could be where you fill your water. It could be, there could be a lot of amenities there for pedestrians, bicyclists alike. Materials. There could, I know, right by the lift bridge, there's like a brochure place, not in the winter because it gets all yuck. But in the summer or 3 seasons, you can go and see where merchants are offering a little trifold brochure. So it could accommodate kind of visitation and hospitality stuff.
Yeah, the opportunity for that is huge. I've seen that in even smaller communities. My aunt and uncle in New Hampshire have a circular trolley that kind of goes around their neighborhood. It's a little kind of destination, and that's the cool thing is that's cool for residents and for visitors, right? So if you want to spend an evening in downtown, for example, especially if you connect that circulator with parking,
That's the idea.
Now you're not just trying to find spaces for people to park downtown. You're also alleviating that congestion, that traffic congestion downtown by taking a whole bunch of people that would otherwise be in a car. Maybe have a parking a little bit outside of downtown. Now you bring all those people downtown with one vehicle instead of 30, right? So that alleviates all the congestion and the hassle, right, for everybody. That's good for pedestrians. That's good for cyclists. That's good for drivers who have to park their car that want to experience Fairport. I think it's a phenomenal idea. I've seen it work. Circulators can be very, very kind of, they work in 2 ways. One, they do everything that I just mentioned. And 2, they can be a little bit of an iconic piece, kind of this is our little trolley, our little...
Can fit the vibe, the charm, all the things that we've already talked about as part of what make Fairport Fairport. So a trolley on Main Street doesn't take away from the vibe because, oh my gosh, we have a permanent shuttle bus. The trolley on Main Street enhances your experience and lets you be part of the vibe, really.
Imagine being a kid, right? Like, a kid like myself. I I was born in Chicago. I loved taking the train. I loved taking public transit. It was cool. You wave at the driver or the train, stuff like that. Kids love that stuff.
Yeah, you're probably the kid that gets like the pilot pin.
Oh, 1,000% I was. Yes, 100%. So you think about families and stuff like that. That can be part of the experience too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's almost a little Disney World-ish, where you kind of like, oh, I'm going to get on the trolley and we're going to go to downtown and we're going to.
It's memorable.
We're going to get some ice cream and it's going to be awesome.
It's it could be a really unique differentiator. I feel like that's the same thing, but it just really could lean into what we already have going for us. So I just love the idea, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but there definitely was some support there in the survey comments. A lot of people were like, that is a cool idea.
Yeah,
I think that there's also some trolley routes in Fairport, and I wish I knew more specifics, but I know there used to be trolleys that ran all the way to the city way back in the day. But then I think even more recently they've talked about it, like the Dockmaster Little Hut, that is an old trolley station, as is like Lithbridge Yarns. So there's some interesting history there. So it's not just coming out of nowhere either, which I think makes it even cooler.
That is true because, Fairport was a big railroad town. So, to kind of, again, lean into that sort of thing, would be kind of a neat, I think, piece, to kind of express that this is how we used to be. We're bringing a little bit of that back.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really neat additive. Yeah.
Cool.
So this has been such a great conversation. We have so much foundation already from a walkable, bikeable, multimodal community and so many opportunities with the DRI or in general to grow and build on that. Arian, you've been such a great guest. Any closing thoughts for our listeners?
No, I got to say what you're doing in Fairport, what Fairport is doing as a whole is phenomenal. Like I said, I love being close to the city, but if I were to move outside of the city, Fairport would be where I would be.
Awesome.
I absolutely love the community. I love the forward thinking, but I also love that residents are also being considered to finding that middle ground. I think Fairport is doing such a great job of being a destination while also being true to the people who live there and call it home.
Thank you so much. It feels so nice to hear that. And I just value your opinion on this topic so much. What was funny was when I said to Brian, my husband, hey, I had to find a guest for our multimodal episode. I said, I'll give you one guess who it is. And first he said, I don't know what multimodal means. So then once I told him that, then he said, Arian. So you definitely have a reputation built around, how into bicycling and urbanism you are. So it was a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you
Where
so much.
can people find your blog?
Just go to the urbanphoenix.com.
Great.
It's, I've been doing this for, like I said, 11, 12 years, talking about, communities, how we can get better about placemaking, how we can, build, meaningful density into our communities, how we can, access our communities through, different modes of transportation, talk about equity and what that means in communities. How do we create communities that are good for everyone, accessible for everyone? Those are the conversations I love to have, and those are the things that I'm truly passionate about and why I do what I do.
Thank you so much.
Great.
All right. See you next time.
We'll be back.
Thanks so much.